Warning. The following is not done by a trained electrician. If you're expecting safe electrical practices or just, competent, wrong place. G'day. Mercenary Thorn here with my teardown video for the Thrustmaster FCS HOTAS. This is on the lead up to me actually doing a full review for it. First thing I want to do is pull the thing apart and see what it looks like on the inside. I've actually pulled apart a few of the joysticks before, at least the older models, so very good idea what to expect inside this lovely thing. The throttle, on the other hand, I haven't opened it up before, so I don't really know what to expect with it. As you see, I'm not doing this live. I figure that this is actually a video that's more appropriate that I can edit later and cut out all the boring bits as I try and work out what goes where. So, anyway, let's start with the one that I know. I'm going to pull apart the T16000M joystick. You never know, it could have something new on it that I'm not familiar with. First thing I'm going to do is unplug it. Alright, so the easy part is just undoing all the screws that we have on the bottom here. Alright, that's all of them. Loosen, let's see if we can get this off. Alright, it's coming free. Make sure to collect those and don't lose them. I swear there should be more than that. Cool. All 6 of them, put them away so I don't lose them. So the base is rather boring. As you can see, it's literally just a weighted base. There's nothing to it, like no connections, nothing. Now, let's have a look in here. I'm not sure how much I'm going to pull this apart. Now, interestingly enough, as you can see, there's a ton of spare wire. I got no idea why that's on every single one of these joysticks. I've seen it before. Maybe it's just part of their construction process. Good old masking tape holding everything together. What else could you want? I think the next thing I'm going to do is actually pull apart this part of the joystick and I can show you what the buttons look like inside. The buttons on the base are actually very low quality, but they do get the job done, and with how much they're used, the solution they've come up with seems to be good enough. So let's get this off. Now let's gently take this thing off and expose the buttons. Alright, I'm not actually going to leave this off for very long, just long enough to show you how this actually works. So, each of the buttons that I showed before underneath the joystick are simply one of these. Now all it is like a little plastic membrane that you push down with something conductive on the bottom. Couldn't tell you exactly what. And when you push it down, the conductive makes contact with those little circles, completes the circuit, and thus presses the button. So, it's not massively good switch, but it does the job. And no doubt saves them a lot of money. One of the reasons this thing is so cheap. I'm going to put it back now. Now I'm going to put this part back together because there's no reason to leave it disassembled. Now on the opposite side, it's exactly the same. No change whatsoever. The only difference is that there's some extra circuitry. You've got your left-right switch here, and this is where all the sensors and switches plug in from the top of the joystick. Put that lovely thing back on because it gets real. I've let them all fall off before, and my god, it gets fiddly. Cool. Alright, that part's done. Now, what else do I want to have a look at while I'm here? As you can, I don't know how well you can see from that video angle, but the same type of buttons are just sitting underneath this circuit board. Now, in this area, oh god, lighting, man, I really need better lighting. You can just make out the spring that automatically centers the joystick. It's nothing fancy. You don't have independent centering per axis or anything like that, like on the Gladiator series, but it gets the job done. Sometimes the spring can feel like a little bit much though. I have contemplated trying to reduce the spring tension sitting inside that thing. for the fun of it, I'm actually going to try and pull this thing off. It's probably a terrible idea, but I'm going to give it a shot. So no idea, like I can't remember if I've done this before. I don't think so. Looks like there's 4 screws to undo here. Please don't break, please don't break, please don't break it. This is definitely under tension. I probably shouldn't be doing this. Getting this back on is going to suck, just to be clear. Now I'm going to have to be careful so this thing doesn't just fling off in my face. Just to be safe, I better remove this tape, give the wire a little bit of area to breathe. I think by now I'm determined to go the whole way, so we're gonna get this thing fully disassembled. Oh, let's have a quick look at what we can see inside here. Let's put those 4 screws somewhere safe so we don't lose them. So here we obviously have the spring that tensions this whole thing. That's interesting. If I ever did want to reduce the spring tension, I possibly could pinch some of that together, maybe with a cable tie. I know that's a method that's used on the Warthog. Now I really hope I haven't decalibrated this. I've got a feeling that little circuit right there is the magnetic sensor, and if I look at the bottom of this joystick, I can see what is probably a magnet. And no doubt that's how it works out the position of the joystick. Alright, let's just hold this up so anyone who wants to have a good look can hopefully make out any of the details they want. And then I'm going to put it back together before I pull it any further apart and forget. That would be really bad. Mostly what I expected. You see the magnetic sensor sitting at the bottom of the joystick. Alright, let's get this back together before I really screw it up. First things first, I'm going to hold the joystick up at this angle so I can seat the spring back down. I've got a feeling this part is going to be a little tricky. I don't know if you managed to see it before, but I do need to align the bottom and the top sections correctly so that they fit into each other on the pivot points. So that is going to be a bit fiddly. Alright, managed to get that back in place. Now I'm going to make sure that I've got the joystick aligned straight up so that I know that the grooves will fit into each other, and then I'm just going to slowly tighten each of these screws alternating. Alright, they're all into just light finger tightness. I'll give them one decent turn each now, just to make sure they're fully in place. So, how many of you picked up what I did wrong there? You remember what I was telling I needed to make sure it was straightly aligned? What I didn't check is that the joystick was facing the right direction. I need to do that again and swap at 180. So I'll just loosen the screws. I thought things were going in a little bit funny there. So, loosen the screws, turn around 180, try again. Keep track of your screws. Alright, I'm in luck, I didn't have to undo them all, so I managed to freely rotate it. I didn't want to force it because that would probably snap something. Cool. So just using 2 to hold it in place, we've managed to re-rotate it the right direction. Now I'm just going to tighten these 2 up, just to make sure nothing crazy happens. And we'll get these other two back in. Much as I hate to say it, I'm going to have to undo this whole thing again, because however the twist mechanism works, I have completely screwed it up. Based off what I'm feeling here, the first time I didn't manage to put it back together is simply because I didn't line up the little curves you can see here with the curve you can see here. That, I believe, is the twist mechanism. In fact, I think I worked out what I did wrong last time. This square section, I would have accidentally turned it 90 degrees so that these grooves didn't actually line up, because I did feel the resistance on the joystick. It only took a massive amount of turn, which meant that the little knobs that you saw down there were having to turn most of 90 degrees before they hit the spots that were meant to be stopping them when they turned at all. So this time, keeping it all aligned correctly, like I should have done the first time, carefully pressing it down, making sure I'm not catching any wires anyway. For a quick test, pushing that all the way in, and yep, the twist on the joystick is working again now. So I definitely made the mistake of turning that little square box 90 degrees. I make mistakes, so you don't have to. So now, hold that down, and we'll put the screws back in. That should all be back together. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to inspect, look for any damage I might have caused, excluding the mess I made. Like, oh god, these wires used to be all neatly aligned. I'm going to have to fix that. But excluding the mess, it looks good. I don't see anything terrible I've done. Now I'm going to do something that's probably very dangerous, not dangerous, but dumb. I'm going to plug it straight in now, and we'll just make sure everything still works before we go any further. All right. It has been detected. Good news. All right, that's come up. Slider's working. Two main axes are working. Z rotation working. Let's go through all buttons. Make sure they all work. Good news! Everything is still working. That's pretty much covered everything on the underside. I could have probably tried to dig into it a little bit deeper, but I didn't want to break everything, and I saw what I really wanted to. And then the last thing I haven't covered is just this little slider here, which is, you know, your cheap analog slider that sits on the Thrustmaster. It's nothing fancy. Again, it's not a magnetic sensor, but for the price, what do you expect? It does the job. I've never had one fail on me yet, though I admittedly don't use it a huge amount. Okay, let's clean up these wires, and I'll get the bottom back on, and then we can pull apart the top joystick and have a look at it. Alright, getting this back together looking neat is going to be difficult, and I frankly don't care enough because it shouldn't matter. So let's just try and fold this stuff down. There's no moving parts at this area. So let's get this thing back on, shall we? I'm being careful not to catch any wires as I put this together. Do need to make sure that this wire comes out the correct section though, otherwise it will not close. Alright, we're good. Let's put in the 6 screws back in the bottom and do them up. Alright, we've now covered the base. I'm now going to pull apart this just to satisfy my curiosity. First thing I'm going to cover is actually this bit right here. Something that you are actually meant to be able to disassemble, so you can spin it around. So if you want to change the joystick between left-handed and right-handed, you actually undo this silver screw right here. Let's get that done. Yep. And that's coming out. And now the base section can actually twist all the way around. And if I wanted it in the left-hand configuration, this now is, you can now put the silver screw in on the other side. So, you know, nice and fancy. For now, I'm actually going to disassemble the whole thing. So there's an extra 2 screws right here to undo. And of course, I'll put this screw in the box so it doesn't go missing. To be clear, to swap between left-handed and right-handed, you don't have to undo these screws. Cool. We've now managed to undo these. They both just slip free, and I can put this part to the side. I'm just going to leave the screws inside, that way they don't go missing. So honestly, that probably wasn't even necessary. I'm just disassembling it because I can. Now, if you want to change over the thing to a left-handed joystick, the next thing you need to do is just peel this lovely thing off. Now, you'll have a replacement part in your box that'll let you swap over to the left-handed side. So pretty much you'll have one of these, except it fits on the other side of the joystick. And you'll have one of these, except it fits on the other side of the joystick. There should be one screw, another silver screw in there that I have to undo, and then the little thumb rest will come off. Cool. To swap the joystick's hands over, you just put these 2 things back in, except in the reverse order. So you only need to undo 2 screws if that's all you want to accomplish. Again, I'll put all that stuff to the side, over there. Now let's actually disassemble this joystick, shall we? The next thing I'm going to do is actually remove this trigger. I found the easiest way to do that was just using an Allen key. So I'm just going to use it. You see there's a little pin right here. I'm just going to push the pin through using the Allen key. Never mind, pick one that's too thick. It's a lot harder than I remember. I'm going to do it from the other side. Seriously, that's not coming out as easy as I remember. I wonder if they're just trying to stop people like me tampering with it. Time for a gentle application of a hammer. Let's put a hold on that. I'm going to disassemble the rest of it and maybe a solution will come to mind. So I'm going to undo all the screws I can actually access. Seems all the screws are on the left-hand side of the joystick. So those two screws are out. Finally, the little screw that's right near the trigger. Assembly. And boxing them so they don't go anywhere. Now these two sections are meant to come apart, but yeah, that little pin in the trigger is causing me some trouble. I'm gonna have to work out what to do about that. Haha! Always find the right tool for the right job, except this isn't a right tool, it's actually still a screwdriver. But it's still more appropriate than trying to use an Allen key. And a hammer. Alright, so yeah, that's working pretty easy this time. Right tool for the right job. I didn't even need to use my hammer, which I'm a little disappointed in. Alright. So now this lovely thing will just come out. I'll put it in the box so I don't lose it. Now, trying not to let everything go flying everywhere, I just gently pull each side of the trigger assembly apart. Unless I'm missing a screw still. Really doesn't want to come undone on this section. First part of the button assembly comes undone. Uses the same button system as down below, as you can see. So, not really high quality buttons, but it does the job. Ah, there we go. Now it's coming apart. Gently. Don't want to break it, and I don't want to spread everything everywhere. Alrighty then. Alright, so let's have a look at one half of these. So as you can see, right here, you've got one of your buttons on the top of the joystick. When you look in here, you can see it's connected to one of these little squishy things that I showed you on the bottom. It's a very simple switch system, but it does the job. And that little squishy thing presses down on one of these circles and just completes the circuit. So very simple, but it does the job. So it uses that mechanism for all three of the buttons. Now, for the trigger, you'll see that there's actually a micro switch sitting underneath here for the trigger that's pushed down. And finally, you can see the little spring mechanism that's actually used for the trigger right here. Now, sitting at the top of this joystick, you can actually see the sensor for twist. I'm actually going to do something just to confirm that that's the case. I'm actually going to plug it in right now and just turn that sensor by itself, but I'm almost sure that's the case. Plugging her in. It is detected. Properties. So yeah, that is Z rotation, that is twist. So we're good. Now let's unplug it before I mess something up. And if you look here, you can see the very simple springs that recenter the joystick. These little metal bars that pop out. You can push them in slightly and then they just want to flick back out again. So that's how, I love little mark, that's how the joystick centers itself. And of course, it's pretty damn obvious, but this is the hat that's sitting at the top of the joystick there. So you can see 4 little micro switches that it presses down in each corner of this square. So yeah, each side, sorry. So that pretty much covers the top of the joystick. It's nothing that crazy. Now it is worth noting that the trigger has failed on me a lot. To fix it, all I've had to do is squirt some non-conductive lubricant, electrical lubricant, into this little area here, and it's always fixed it. I'm not sure if that's because this mechanism here starts jamming up, or if it actually manages to reach the micro switch with the lubricant, and it was the micro switch that was failing. Next time my joystick fails, I'll actually have to pull it apart and have a proper look and work out what the fail point is. All I know is that when I've needed to fix it, spraying in the lubricant just into this section, even while it's assembled, seems to have done the trick. And yet worth noting is the other part of this joystick, the one that's actually forced me to replace the joystick that nothing else ever has, is this sensor right here. I should probably look into what type of sensor this is, because if I could ever manage to replace it, I'd actually be able to keep some of my old joysticks going. So I'm not sure if I can work that part out. Alright, that's pretty much the top of the joystick. It's a lot easier than the bottom, so I'm going to put it all back together. So it's a little bit tricky. Got to make sure everything's nice and aligned. There's little grooves that these springs need to be in. It's not too hard though. Just looking to work out where everything is meant to be. There we go. That little flat piece there that you can see there needs to line up with the sensor. Now I know what height it needs to be. So yeah, now it's easy. So I'm just going to hold that piece on right there. I'm going to slide the circuit board back in. Lucky for me, that little spring part of the button is still attached to the button, so I just need to slide it under it. Careful, careful. Cool. Button feels like it normally does. Pretty squishy, but you know. Alright, this button is still also assembled, so this one will be easy. That means the only one I need to worry about is the middle bottom one. So I'll put its little squishy friend back in the little hole. There you go. Now, carefully slide that back into place on top of the circuit board. There we go. Holding both the side and that button. And trying not to throw things around too much. I'll just push the other half back in. Still looks good. Doesn't want to go together. So I'm just wiggling it around until I find it. There we go. There we go. Check the buttons, we're all still good. Buttons appear to still be good. I haven't forgotten anything, have I? No, we're good. Now, before I do any more assembly, I'm going to plug it in one last time and make sure everything still works, particularly the buttons, anything to do with the top section. Assuming it does, I should be good to just put it all back together. Alright. The axes are all still working, the buttons at the top. And the hat switch. And the trigger. We're good. So now I'll get to the 3 screws that were holding that little assembly back on. Alright, that part is done. Let's get the trigger back on, shall we? So that's really easy. Trigger just slides there, and now I need to get the little pin back in. So either side should do the job. Just put it back in the hole. And slide her in. And just give it a good nudge. Yep, it is now back in position. The trigger's working. Excellent. Let's get the thumb rests back on. So, you go in there. No worries. Wait, sorry, wrong order. Do the thumb part first. Thumb part, go there. Now, long silver screw to hold it in place. Do that up tightly. Alright. Now, you go into place. Cool. Now we need to do this bottom part. Shouldn't be too rough. Whoop, that's right, I left the 2 screws in there like a fool. Alright, it's alright, they're still there. We haven't lost them. That's right, it needs to go the other way around, doesn't it? So let's just turn this around there, and we'll put that last silver screw in that holds that in place. Oh, and that's the joystick done. And I've actually done this one before. The throttle I haven't, so no doubt that one's going to be even tougher. So, yeah. Let's do one more quick run through, make sure everything's working, then I can get onto the throttle. So, it's all still plugged in. I wasn't playing with wires, so I'm not that upset about that. Just going through all buttons for a start, making sure they're all working. Excellent. And the axes are working. We're good. Onto the throttle. And now we're getting to destroying the throttle. I mean, pulling apart the throttle. Alright. Haven't done this lovely thing before, so it's going to be a little trickier. What do we got at the bottom? Just a bunch of screws it looks like I'm going to have to undo. Nothing too fancy there. Let's unplug it like a pro. Alright. So if I actually unplug this one beforehand. I think I need coffee. All screws loosened, let's get them off. One last one being stubborn. Alright, that's all the screws gone. Let's get this thing off. How to do this? Okay. That's easy. No wires connected to the bottom. Looks like it's purely cosmetic. Unlike the joystick, it doesn't even have any weights in it, so nice and light. Let's put it to the side. Ooh. Let's have a look at the inside here, shall we? What do we have? Here's the lovely slider mechanism. So that means this thing right here has to be a little sensor, the main throttle axis. Man, I've got a bit of dust in this thing already. Man, I haven't been using it for that long. It's a little surprising. I might have to give it a clean at some point. I've been using it for a few months, let's be honest. I'm wondering what I've done here, by the way. When this bottom plate is on, that little hole there actually gives you, when the throttle is in one position, this hole gives you access to this screw. I've loosened that in the past because it affects the tightness of the throttle going up and down. And to make it as smooth as possible, I loosened the hell out of it because I like being able to throw it around. Let's tighten it to maximum. I want to see what it feels like. I don't know what these hangy things out. I doubt they were like that when I first bought the thing. Yet now the throttle is being all sticky and resisting movement a lot. I personally like this nice and loose. And now the throttle just glides back and forward. So much prefer it like that. By the way, worth mentioning, I have seen a YouTube video of someone who wanted this screw still to be at a fairly tight level, but also didn't want it sticking all the time. So they actually added a whole bunch of grease along this area. That would be another option. I'm personally happy just to undo this screw. What do I need to find out about this thing? On the base of this throttle, of course, there's no buttons, so there's nothing too complex. The only sensor on this part of the throttle is right here. That's it, part of the circuit board. So I've got really nothing else to disassemble in this base worth having a look at. I can't really tell what type of sensor that is. It doesn't appear to be a magnetic one. I wasn't expecting it to be honest. No idea how long it's going to last. It'll just be time will tell when it comes to that sensor. Let me see if I can get you a good shot of it. So you can see the sensor right there, just on the end. And it takes the input pretty obviously from the throttle going back and forward. Cool, that's about it. Alright, so now the real tricky part is I need to get this top assembly off the throttle and have a look inside. I can see screws on the underside, which I'm not going to be able to reach unless I actually manage to pull this whole damn thing off. So I'm going to have to start attacking these screws right here and see what ones do the job that I need them to. This is going to suck. Alright, let's start undoing screws and let's pray that I don't break something. The only screws that I'll probably need to undo are these three, and there's a third one hidden underneath there, so I'm probably going to have to undo this. Let's start by taking that one off. Cool. Screw and washer. Let's put them away. Lift this off. Just put it to the side. Now I better not pull back because I'll probably break something. So let's try undoing the three screws that we can see here. Yep. As soon as I start undoing the third one, I can feel the lower, like the top section coming off. So those three screws are the ones. Good. I was worried I'd have to disassemble things like crazy. Three screws I can handle. All right. Let's flick this spare wire up and feed it through. And now that I'm doing that, it's coming free. I'm going to get these three screws. I'm going to put them away just so I don't lose them. Cool. Get as much spare wire through that as I can without breaking anything. Here's the top section. That's actually rather interesting. Wouldn't be too hard to mod something on top of that now, would it? Don't mind me, my mind's just going places. Alright. 6 screws on the bottom of this that I'll need to undo. I'm not like, it looks like if I wanted to, I could undo this cable that feeds through here, but I'm not going to. I'm only disassembling enough to, you know, satisfy my curiosity. So I've got 6 screws to undo here. Alright, those 6 screws are out. Let's put them safely away. Correction, 7. Alright, now I've undone the screws. Let's see what comes apart. Oh, careful, careful. Don't want to break it. All right. I hope I can get this phone back into sport later. Let's have a look inside, shall we? Ooh, isn't that interesting? Dang it, I wish I could get that camera closer or zoom it in. But it's going to be a little tricky to get you a nice shot in there, but stop the screwdriver rolling off for a part. Let's see if we can get you a nice shot inside there. Can have a good look. So you can see the rocker sensor sitting right there. Yeah. There's a little black box there, so you can see the rocker sensor. Not that any of this is telling us too much. I'm mostly just satisfying my curiosity. And who knows, one day I might need to try and do a repair on some of these buttons. Rocker can just lift right off. That looks like it'll hold in its place. You know what? I might actually see if I can take this wire off. It's starting to get a little convoluted doing all this. Just carefully took that wire off. Now this part is separate. Not too bad to disassemble this thing, actually. So if I ever do need to do a repair, it hopefully won't be too bad. So I'll slide you guys over there. Alright, so there's another one of those cheap switches, like the membrane ones from the joystick, but it works with that button. It does the job. That's interesting. For this axis right here, they've actually got a little gear to save themselves space. If I can get a shot of that. Oh man, it's just not working. Need better lighting. Let's try taking off this back panel. I want to see more information about this thing and how it's assembled. So there's two screws sitting at the back here. Hope I remember how to put this back together. Hopefully this back panel is going to lift off. Yep, there we go. I could have done that without the rest of the assembly. Alright, now you can see that gear system clearly. No issue whatsoever. Interesting way of doing it. You can see the little joystick sensor that they've got there moving around, doing its thing. Two more membrane sensors, nothing too fancy, about what you'd expect. From the feel of this and the look inside, I'd say these two switches here are just little micro switches. Can't see inside the box though. This button is just another little one of those squishy ones. Membrane, nothing fancy, does the job. And these three 8-directional switches right here all have their own little enclosure, which I'm guessing all hold little micro switches again. And that pretty much covers all the buttons I can think of on this thing, just in case you were wondering what they're using. So now we do the fun part. I'm going to try and reassemble this thing. It's going to be interesting. Wish me luck. Alright. So this side section feels like it needs to go in first. And then the back section comes on after that. Excellent. Let's get these two little screws back in place to hold it together. Good. All buttons and such still feel good. Let's put the rocker back on. Done. Didn't have anything else holding it that I remember. Hope that's how it works. Next up, we need to get this lovely thing back on. So, we need to reconnect this wire. So, I'll just gently push it back into place. It can only go one way, so I'm not getting this wrong. It's in. Alright. Now, this is the tricky part, I think. I've got to get this foam back into place. So we'll hug it around the wire and then just try and squeeze it in there. That's not good. How convenient, it fell my direction. Alright, it's all good. And we'll try and squeeze that foam back in there. I think that's just to keep dust out or something, I don't even know. There's got to be a reason. They wouldn't put it there for no reason, so I'm going to leave it there. Cool, that's back in. Pull the wire through as I push the bottom section down. Oop. Feels good. So now we need to get those 7 screws back into this bottom section. Seriously, who makes a round screwdriver? This thing is rolling all over the table. God, what I would do for a square on the back. God dang it. Alright, we've got our 7 screws. Let's put them in. Alright, that part's done. Now, we need to actually get this all back together. So, these are the 3 screws that I'll require. Right there, let's leave them, don't lose them. At least they roll in circles rather than in a straight line. Now let's feed this wire back through and line up the 3 holes on this with the 3 holes here. Yep, that looks good. Let's re-secure it. Make sure it's nice and tight. You know, this is actually going better than the joystick did. Slip this back into place. We'll go get the screw. Screw with washer. This one was pretty tight. Cool. That is working. Alright. Now, while I've got this open, I'm actually going to think about how I would do a middle indent or perhaps a spring to return it to center. Because that's one of the things that really bugs me about this joystick. For space sims, you really want some way to know you're back at center, at the very least. And a spring to return to center is actually pretty nice too, at least from the reverse half. But I don't expect them to do that. It looks like mounting a spring in that back section is fairly doable. Personally, I like using pedals rather than throttles, and I'm probably going to keep doing that because I like the spring return to center. But if I was going to use a throttle, I would probably try and modify this by putting a spring back there, or at the very least some type of indent in the center so I feel when it reaches the center position. I'm just pondering, trying to work out how I can make that indent for a home mod. Honestly, just finding springs that fit these rods would be ideal, and length them so that they'll go back just to the center position. Could even add them on both sides if you were so inclined. They don't need to be particularly strong, just enough to center it. If I end up using this long term instead of pedals, I'll try and put more effort into finding a nice solution for it. And the tape is clearly put here to try and stop it from fraying, so I better make sure that's in the right spot, and yeah, the wire can reach both those extents. By the way, this is something to keep an eye on. There is a chance this might break at some point. It'd be a pretty easy fix. I know that the X55 from SciTech had an issue with the wire breaking that bent all the time. We'll just have to see how it goes. The rest of the wire looks to be in its positions as it should be, so we are good to reassemble this thing. But yeah, definitely want to mess with this mechanism at some point, see if I can make it better suited for me. Put that back in place. Good. Make sure we put this back on the right way, which I have not done. It goes around the other way. Doi. Cool. Now, of course, I've still got to do some screws up, but before I do that, I'm going to plug it into the computer and we're going to make sure it still works. We'll check all buttons and axes. Main axis check, Z-axis is working. Mini stick working. Rockers working. Side dial working. So that's all the analog axes. Now let's check the buttons. Button 1, working. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and the hat switch. So I can confirm this throttle is still all working. So somehow I didn't actually break my joystick. Now, I'm probably going to need to recalibrate at least my joystick because I'm sure I've messed something up. But I can do that one on Windows. Piece of cake. I mean, the calibration stuff is just right there on the Windows, so that won't be a problem. So let's actually do these screws up, shall we? Before I forget. Alright, that is the assembly and disassembly of the Thrustmaster FCS HOTAS complete. Now, you know, I wasn't an expert run at doing this. I was still pretty new, but I had good fun, learned a little bit about the construction of these things. And yeah, the quality isn't the greatest, but when you take into account the price of this HOTAS, I'd say they've done a very good job of using the money that they have to produce a good product. So, yeah, I'm actually perfectly happy with what I found under the hood of both of these things. Yeah, that's about it. If you've got any questions or comments and stuff like that, feel free to leave them down below. I am going to get to work soon on making an actual review of this stuff. I just figured pulling them apart and having a look inside was a good lead up to that. And, yeah, that is about it. Cheers and good hunting. Haha.